The U.S. Supreme Court ruled yesterday, February 20th, 2026, that President Trump's tariff policy violated the law. So after that, what will happen to Canada and other countries? And this video will tell you something about it. The United States is a country with tripartite balance of power: the president, Congress, and the court. One of the most important reasons why the United States has been able to remain powerful and successful is because it has great presidents like Washington and Lincoln, also because it has a strong legal system. Today, the law stood against President Trump, rejecting his tariff policies. Let's look back at President Trump's tariff policies. Why did Trump impose tariffs on the world? He used the International Trade Emergency Act. According to the act, the U.S. had a serious trade deficit, and to solve this serious problem, Trump came up with the solution of increasing tariffs. The result of these tariffs was basically that ordinary people had to pay slightly more for goods, but the tax revenue went into national treasury. With more money in the national treasury, President Trump then implemented government layoffs and withdrew from numerous international organizations to save money and reduce U.S. debt. That is correct. So why would the judge object it? It seems that Trump's tariffs policy has been opposed by taxpayers and people all around the world. That is for sure. However, in a way, Trump is quite brave. By implementing his tariff policies, he'll shorten his own lifespan by a few years. And I recall about 5-6 years ago, I saw reports stating that the U.S. national debt was over $30 trillion. That is, each American carry a debt of $40,000 4 or 5 years ago. And 4 or 5 years ago, their total debt might be $20 trillion, something like that, not 30 trillion like today. Today, the average American debt is $110,000. That means it has more than doubled from $40,000. The U.S. debt continues to expand. I remember when President Bill Clinton was president, Microsoft, if it used its annual revenue to pay off the U.S. debt, Microsoft could have done so in 3 or 5 years. At that time, the U.S. had almost not much national debt. But after these 20 years, the U.S. national debt has suddenly become unbearable, and no one is addressing the problem. So President Trump tried to solve the problem with tariffs, which was opposed by the world and American people, and even by the U.S. court. How did this situation come about? We need to look at American history and the rule of law. Specifically, what happened in the 400 years of American history, and why history has shaped today. Let's look at American history. In 1920, British immigrant ships arrives on American continent. This ship carried 102 Puritans and 30 crew members. After a 10-week voyage, they landed in Massachusetts, USA, on November 21st, 1620. This is the basic history. This is the basic history of America. Ship after ship of Englishmen and Europeans came to America. I remember that one ship had an agreement written on the boat before landing, outlining what would happen after landing. So when these American colonists set foot on the American continent, they brought with them the spirit of agreement. Besides the spirit of agreement, they also brought law, because 400 years ago, England had the most advanced and sound legal system in the world. So these Englishmen came to North American continent with the spirit of agreement and the well-developed legal system. Ship after ship of people arrived in different parts of America. States were established in these different places. At that time, there were no nations. It was trade between the states and trade with Europe and other parts of the world. So gradually, it was discovered that a nation needs to be established. Then each state sent its own representatives to negotiate how to establish the nation. Each state distrusted the federal president. Therefore, during the negotiation, they imposed many restrictions on the president's power. For example, the president's power was very big, while the vice president held a largely symbolic position with no real power, only assuming office should the president die. This prevented a power struggle between president and vice president. And when they assign president certain power at the same time, put on related limitations so the president cannot do whatever he wanted. It seems President Trump is the most powerful president in U.S. history. He went beyond his power. That may be why Supreme Court against him to balance the power. Therefore, law is the cornerstone of America's 400 years development. Throughout these 400 years, law has played an extremely crucial role guiding America step by step to where it is today. Today, facing such a complex global economic and political environment, the justice of U.S. Supreme Court have once again played a role in ensuring that the U.S. continues to develop according to the original tripartite balance of power. It's not that the U.S. president can do whatever he wants. Returning to the topic of American history, it's said that Washington had no chance to become emperor. Like right now, a couple of days ago, people go on street and say no king. And for Washington, there's no chance for him to become a king. That is to say, after George Washington led the Continental Army to defeat the British colonial army, Congress immediately removed him from his position as a commander-in-chief. This was because Congress had initially suspected him. fearing he would use his power to arrest a member of Congress. So after Washington led the Continental Army to victory, Congress immediately ordered his removal from position of commander-in-chief. Then Congress discussed whether a president was needed. After repeated discussions, they finally decided to do election for their first president. Of course, Washington got a president because he was warmly loved by the people. But being president also brought many difficulties for Washington. He didn't understand many things at the beginning of the country. But Washington was very intelligent and smart. Regarding legal issues he didn't understand, after he consulted a legal expert, then he made a decision. He didn't understand other aspects too, so he listened to others' opinion and then made a decision accordingly. When Washington first became president, his power was very weak, much less than that of President Trump. Everything he did required Congress approval. So Washington was a very wise man. He did a very good job. He served a second term, and after that he retired. And that said the rule of U.S. president can only do two terms. This is the president's second term. Will he be able to do third term? Maybe not. The next few presidents were second John Adams and Thomas Jefferson, third president. Jefferson, third president, played a very important role in U.S. history and development. He made the direction of American development through law. Everyone knows that during World War II, there was a general called Marshall. When the United States was originally founded a couple of hundred years ago, the Supreme Court justice at that time was also named Marshall. They are descendant relatives. This Justice Marshall served as a Supreme Court justice for over a decade, serving under several presidents. At many crucial moments in American history, Justice Marshall's rulings have been historically significant. Both the U.S. and Canada rely on the law itself, also along with previous precedents to determine later case situation. Therefore, after so many years of development, the law has played a crucial role in the U.S., forming the tripartite balance of power: Congress, the President, and the courts. These three powers balanced each other to resolve national dispute. However, sometimes the courts cannot resolve national disputes. For example, when President Trump's first term ended, during the U.S. presidential election, he claimed election fraud. The case went to Supreme Court, which rejected the claim. The court should have investigated whether there was a fraud in the presidential election, but it didn't. Ultimately, this resulted in Trump's removal from office and Biden's rise to power. The justices in U.S. Supreme Court are very smart. They didn't accept the fraud claim when Trump left office after his first term, allowing the U.S. government an election to move forward on its own at that time. But now the Supreme Court ruling that US President Trump's tariffs are illegal. The US is so prosperous today, and I believe US law will continue to ensure its continued prosperity. Many Canadians oppose Trump's tariff policies. However, generally speaking, if the US prospers, Canada prospers along with it. For example, when Dow Jones Industrial Average increase by 10,000 points in 2025, Canadian stock index also increased by 10,000 points. So considering the 400 years history of the US-Canada funding has followed the US for 200 years. Trump said that Canada exists because of the US. Carney said that Canada's prosperity today is due to the effort of Canadian people and the country. But Canada benefits from the US. That is true. For example, during COVID-19, when US provided vaccine, Canada did it too. When US gave out money to its citizens, Canada did it too. Canada has always followed the US. So throughout its centuries-long history, from its founding to its development, Canada has consistently followed the footsteps of the US. Therefore, we hope the continued prosperity of the US. We also prospered and thrived. Conversely, regarding the US-Canada trade agreement, my judgment is that the US won't tear up the CUSMA agreement and ruin Canada, because Canada's collapse would not benefit the US. Its aim is simply to take advantage of Canada to compensate for its own fiscal deficit. However, after the Supreme Court ruling that its tariffs on Canada and the rest of the world were illegal, President Trump immediately announced a 10% tariff on all the countries, later changed to 15%, indicating he was complying with the court's decision. This means that starting next week, the US tariffs on China over 100% tariff, South Korea 25%, and the EU and UK 15%, etc. Those tariffs must be immediately lifted to comply with the court's ruling. After lifting these additional tariffs, he then imposed a new 15% tariff on all countries worldwide, based on Section 122 of the International Emergency Trade Authorization Act. This tariff was set to expire in 150 days, which will expire in July of 2026. Then need Congress's approval to continue. Will Congress approve it? That's depend on the Congress. The US is also facing midterm election in the middle of 2026, and that will determine if the new 15% tariff will continue or not. So domestic issues like tariffs, midterm elections, and returning illegally collected tariff will be keeping President Trump busy. Any small advantage he might gain in our trade negotiations is insignificant compared to his current chaotic situation. It won't significantly help him resolve his domestic problems, leaving him less energy to pressure Canada. This is very good news for the CUSMA or NAFTA negotiation. We see a glimmer of hope. We can now live peacefully and do business with peace in mind. Our investment and employment prospects look promising. Okay, just share these informations with you about what is going on for the following the Supreme Court's decision that tariffs is illegal, and some of the country already expressed that they will continue to do following to the existing trade negotiation they already done to U.S., but some of them will not. So part of the country, they will for the under the tariff threat, like EU will invest 600 billions to US and South Korean and Taiwan and Japan also for 400, 500, 600 billions investment. And some of them already money already flow to US, but I doubt all of them will continue to execute the already negotiated the trade agreement. So U.S. investment will be less, and that is not good for the stock market and U.S. economy, and U.S. government will facing the problem of refund collected tax. That will make U.S. government in difficult situation. So I didn't see the Dow Jones collapse and drop too much till now, but there is a negative information for U.S. market, and that negative stock market will pass to Canada. So so we as some people are doing investing and doing business, so they need to pay attention to the stock market and following new information about what will happen next. Okay, that's about today. Bye bye.